Krishna, everyone. A very warm welcome back to our continued series on the glories of Sri Vrindavan Dham. We'll begin with obeisances to Srila Prabhupada. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine. O beloved spiritual master, you are always in the presence of the cowherd girl Radha, the daughter of King Vrishabhanu. Please award me service at your lotus feet, which are the proprietors of devotional service. Please place me in the ocean of joy by bestowing upon me happiness in the mellows of service at the feet of Sri Radha in the groves of Vrajadam. So today we are continuing with a short series that we started on Govardhan Hill. I think this is number 3. In the last 2 sessions we discussed the puja, the actual sacrifice to Giriraja that the Vrajavasis offered to him instead of Lord Indra. The big feast they offered the deity on the hill, Annakuta, the Govardhan Parikrama, the first Govardhan Parikrama, and the ceremony of love between brothers and sisters on the banks of the Jamuna that they observed. Then a little bit about Indradeva's revenge with his Samvartaka clouds. And then a little bit about Krishna's lifting Govardhan Hill and his invitation to all the Vrajavasis to take shelter under that hill in an area described like a subterranean heavenly kingdom. And we left you hanging there. We said we'd share the details today. So with the help of Kavikarna Purna's Ananda Vrindavan Champu and Jiva Goswami's Gopal Champu, as well as other acharyas and saints, let's go inside that kingdom and see what happened. So the Samvartaka clouds were literally devastating Vrindavan with torrents of wind and rain, etc. And as that was happening, on Krishna's invitation, some of the Vrajavasis began to cautiously advance towards the heavenly kingdom where Krishna stood. But then they turned back when Mother Yasoda insisted that her son would not be able to continue holding the hill. She said like that. He's not going to be able to do it. He's just a little boy. And at that point, it's described, Krishna became a little irritated. And he said to the Vrajavasis, "Don't listen to my mother, who mistakenly thinks that Govardhan Hill can slip from my hand. Rather, enter beneath its shelter at once." And Nectar Devotion describes that just as Krishna spoke these words, Srimati Radharani caught his eye. He looked over and saw Sri Radha, which caused him to briefly falter, making the hill shake in his hand. And the Vrajavasis, they took this as evidence that Krishna's mother might be right. And Ujjvala Nilamani 1039 by Jiva Goswami, we hear how at this moment, Srimati Radharani turned and whispered to Vishaka, "My dear Vishaka, look at how Krishna keeps his right hand on his hip and beams an enchanting smile, even while holding the brother of Mount Mandara like a ball." So she refers to Govardhan Hill as the brother of Mount Mandara. So when I read that, I said, what's that? And I did a little more research, and I found out that Mandara Mountain is also a son of Drona, the father of Govardhan Hill. Therefore, he's the brother of Govardhan Hill. So Radharani continued, "The restless bumblebee of his sidelong glance causes the flower of my heart to tremble." Vrindavaneshwari Srimati Radharani ki. Now at this point, as the Vrajavasis proceeded towards the shelter of Govardhan Hill, they felt confident of Krishna's protection. And as they were getting closer, they were amazed to see rows and rows of elegant, ornate staircases. This we mentioned last lecture. And beyond them, an effulgent valley, whose opulence, it is said, shamed the celestial gardens that surround Mount Meru. It's described a divine Vaikuntha-like serenity pervaded that realm beneath the hill, and the effects of the storm still raging just outside that safe haven seem conspicuous by their absence. And the sides of that subterranean valley were studded with glowing, glistening jewels that illuminated the entire area with the same soft, comforting glow that lights the palace of Lord Narayan. I already liked that. The floor was a mosaic of uncommon gems that were not only effulgent, but they were pleasantly soft and velvety to the touch. The gems were velvety to the touch. And the entire area was divided separately to accommodate the men, women, children, and cows. There were sitting places and couches and groves for resting everywhere, offering all kinds of comforts to the Vrajavasis. And everywhere there was green grasses and soft, sweet grass. And pools of clear water offering their services to the cows. A soft breeze bearing the scent of kadamba flowers and sandalwood blew gently through and beneath Govardhan Hill, refreshing both the bodies and the minds of everyone who were, it's described, weary from their ordeal. And as the Vrajavasis entered under Giriraja, they were happy to see that both they and all their possessions, like carts and household goods, and animals, etc., could easily be accommodated in comfort and opulence that was unmatched, even on the planet of Sutala. I guess Sutala has a lot of opulence. Now, an amazing thing is that when the Vrajavasis looked up at Govardhan's underside, because they're underneath now, so looking under Govardhan, they saw it to be like a gigantic peacock in flight, expanding and contracting, as if to show that it could easily accommodate all the residents of the three worlds. And then suddenly, magically, mystically, Krishna's sweet voice resounded throughout the whole area under Govardhan Hill. He said, "O friends, you saw how Giriraja appeared in person and easily consumed the mountains of food you offered to him. Giriraja only appears to be a mountain. In reality, he's a great transcendentalist," Krishna said. In reality, he's a great transcendentalist. Why then should it be difficult for him to become weightless and sit upon my finger like a butterfly? Why should it be difficult for him to become weightless and sit upon my finger like a butterfly? Then he goes on, how else could a child pick him up so easily? Govardhan Hill is completely independent. He does whatever he wants. I'm just an instrument, a puppet by the strings of his will. So beautiful. Kavikarnapurna. And entering into this deep, it's described like a cavernous area, the Vrajavasis said they parked their bullock carts beneath an area near the center of the hill. And then they stationed armed watchmen all around to guard their bullock carts. And then they divided their cows and herds and brought them to graze on the green pastures under the hill. And these grassy areas were located along the perimeter of their newfound home. This is like really detailed. Where were the cows eating grass? On the perimeter of under the hill of Govardhan. And then there's a nice description that of Krishna holding up the hill. It's written that Krishna was of medium height, and while holding up Govardhan Hill, he stood on a crystal boulder, which made his feet at the shoulder level of most of the gopas. It's also described that the height from the floor of the heavenly abode, the ground they're on, up to the base of Govardhan Hill, which is above them, the bottom of the hill there, was 1 tala in size. So I'm thinking, what's a tala? So then I found out that a tala is the average height of a tala, a palm tree, which according to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is 60 hastas. 60 hastas. Then I had to find out what a hasta was. And a hasta is 27 meters. So the conclusion is that area from the bottom of Govardhan to the ground was 27 meters. Wow. So the acharyas describe that the color of Krishna's body was the same as the rain clouds outside. Yet there was a huge difference in their effects between the two, between the effulgent, the color of Krishna's body and the color of the clouds outside. They're the same, but there's a difference in their effect. And the difference was that Krishna's bodily hue was soothing to the eyes, whereas the sight of the clouds was distressful. Also, the sound of Krishna's voice and the sound of the thunder outside were similar. His voice and the thunder outside were similar, but then again they were not the same. It's very poetic. Because the quality of Krishna's voice was pleasing, whereas the rumble of the clouds outside was terrifying. And then the acharyas give another nice analogy. Analogies help us perceive things more clearly. They write that the bright yellow flashes of Krishna's dhoti were the same as the flashes of the lightning outside. But his dazzling cloth assured safety to the people of Braja, whereas the lightning signaled imminent danger. And the gopis also experience these, I would say like transcendental dualities. Is that a proper phrase? The gopis experience these transcendental dualities in another way. That the acharyas say their hearts were greatly worried seeing Krishna holding up a heavy hill, Govardhan Hill, but at the same time they were filled with a great festival of bliss, being able to see him day and night. That's rare for the gopis. This is poetry, and the true poetic descriptions we're saying, and that's this is the true purpose of poetry. Really, it has a way of awakening our sentiments for Krishna. There's that beautiful verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Antya 195. Kim kavyena kaveshtasya kim kandena danusmata parasya hridaye lagnam nagur nayati chira. Another favorite. What is the use of a bowman's arrow or a poet's poetry if they penetrate the heart but do not cause the head to spin? What is the use of a bowman's arrow or a poet's poetry if they penetrate the heart but do not cause the head to spin? So our head is spinning. Krishna, 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 hey. For the people of Vrindavan, Krishna was always their shelter in difficulties. You read Krishna book, it's one after another, Krishna's coming to the rescue. And now that he had rescued them again, they just crowded around and stared at him with, it's described, a renewed and special affection. The acharyas say that this renewed and special affection that the Vrajavasis felt for Krishna was a result of their newfound intimate connection with Govardhan Hill. Jai Giriraja. As Haridas Varya, the best of Krishna's servants. Govardhan Hill has a very special service attitude towards the Lord, and by their close proximity to Giriraj, it's described the Vrajavasis' love was flavored by this unique mood of loving service. Association. It's all about association. Hari Guru Vaishnava. With the Lord, with the spiritual master and the Vaishnavas, and Giriraj. So although no one appreciates Krishna's beauty as much as the Vrajavasis do, they began to appreciate his beauty from a new perspective. You could say through the eyes of Govardhan Hill. So as the Vrajavasis settled in, they separated into groups. The cowherd men mixed with the brahmanas, the elderly married ladies, they stayed with their daughters, and Srimati Radharani and the other young married gopis, they stayed with their in-laws. And friends like Madhu Mangal, they stayed by Krishna's side, while Nanda Maharaj, Mother Yashoda and Balaram, they stayed right in front of him. Give me 1 second here. It's nicely written that all these Vrajavasis and more, they were thinking, until now we have never fully appreciated the magnificent elegance of Krishna's body or the perfect beauty of his face. They said, look at how his right thumb is tucked into the blazing red cloth around his handsome hips, made more opulent by the 3 beautiful lines of his belly, and his favorite instrument, the flute. And when lightning from beyond the shelter of Govardhan, created a flickering shadow of Krishna upon the ground, one Vrajavasi added, just see how the beauty of his right side decorates the earth, the shadow. You see Krishna everywhere, even in shadow. And never before had all the Vrindavan's residents, I guess you could say human or otherwise, felt such dependence upon him all at one time. And of course Krishna felt as much love for the Vrajavasis as they felt for him because, well, love's reciprocal. What do they say? Two-way street. So mystically, when all the Vrajavasis surrounded Krishna on all sides, on his right, left, front, and behind, they could all see his beautiful face. Someone's on the right, someone's on the left, someone's in the front, someone's in the back. But he's the master of mystic powers. Everyone could see his beautiful face, as if they were standing directly in front of him. And each of them thought that he was returning his or her gaze alone. It's described that outside Govardhan's shelter, torrential rains and roaring thunder and icy winds and dense darkness prevailed. But inside, there was only dry comfort, sweet talks, pleasing breezes, and a charming light that prevailed everywhere. I like that part. Outside, but inside there was dry comfort, sweet talks, pleasing breezes, a charming light that prevailed everywhere. I want to go there. In fact, as time went on, even the disturbances outside, it didn't affect the Vrajavasis. So beautiful. Looking inside out, under the umbrella of Govardhan Hill, they saw the falling rain appearing as strings of pearls hanging from the umbrella's sides. Giriraja is like an umbrella, right? So the water's coming down. So how did the Vrajavasis see it? like strings of pearls hanging from the umbrella sides. And if at any time the Vrajavasis did feel any anxiety, Krishna would relieve their worry by speaking to them in a playful way. Or he would play his bamboo flute with his free hand. Or he would just rest his hand or his arm on the shoulder of a cowherd boy. So Shastra goes on to explain that meanwhile they were entertainers, they were singing and dancing, the wealthy were giving in charity, Brahmins were reciting mantras, and children were praying for Krishna holding up the hill. Isn't that sweet? The wealthy are giving in charity, Brahmanas are reciting mantras, and little children, they're praying for Krishna holding up the hill. The only person whose anxiety was not relieved, however, were Krishna's parents, a number of the gopis, and a few of his close friends, who all felt that the enormous weight and the size of the mountain was simply too much for little Krishna to bear. For example, on the first day Krishna held up Govardhan Hill, he looked disheveled. I got this from Nectar Devotion, chapter 49. On the first day that Krishna lifted up Govardhan Hill, he was looking a little disheveled. It's described that his hair was scattered all over his shoulders, and he appeared to be perspiring from fatigue. And Mother Yasoda trembled to see her son in such a state. And when a cowherd boy drew Krishna's attention to Mother Yasoda's anxiety, Krishna tried to put his mother at ease by making funny faces at her. And those comical faces worked magic, convincing Mother Yasoda that holding up a mountain was mere child's play for her son. So she again became happy and she smiled warmly. But then in time, she started calculating how long Krishna had been lifting up Govardhan Hill, and then again become overwhelmed by an anxiety. Let's see, it said an anxiety that soaked her clothes in perspiration. This is, again, Vatsalya Bhav. Soaked her clothes in perspiration. Now, the Acharyas conclude that waves of anxiety and happiness such as these, which continued for 7 days, and I'm going to quote here, elevated the intensity of the Vrajavasis' love for Krishna to unprecedented heights. Get ready to go home to Vrindavan. Waves of anxiety and happiness such as these, which continued for 7 days, elevated the intensity of the Vrajavasis' love for Krishna to unprecedented heights. Of course, this was one of Krishna's objectives in this pastime of lifting Govardhan Hill. By doing one thing, the Lord accomplishes many things. But this was one of his objectives, to magnify his devotees' love for him and his love for them, which is really a constant and continuous theme of many of his Vrindavan pastimes. But the lifting of Govardhan Hill in itself is a very special and unique pastime, because it brought all of the Vrajavasis together at the same time. And it gave them the unprecedented opportunity to see Krishna continuously, day and night, for an entire week. And it was a very special benediction for the Vrajagopis, because everyone was taking the rare advantage of constantly gazing at their hero Krishna without restrictions. We mentioned that earlier. The Vrajavasis, they always want to be with Krishna. And now they're with him 24/7. Yeah, 24/7, literally 24/7, 24 hours a day for 7 days. So they just took the opportunities to always gaze at him. Now the gopis also got to do this. They just Generally, it's just glances. Last class we talked about sidelong glances. So generally when Krishna's passing by their village on the way to the forest with his cowherd boys and cows, it's just, he glances at them and they glance at him, and maybe there's some secret meetings, but generally it's glances. But here now under Govardhan Hill, no one objected to the gopis looking at him with wide open, unblinking, how can I say, tear-filled eyes for days on end. Generally it was just a glance. So this is a special pastime. Krishna's lifting the Govardhan Hill. By one thing he accomplished many. In Vrindavan, Krishna has pastimes with different groups of devotees at different places at different times. There's no mixing of the rasas. Nanda and Yashoda are with Krishna at home. The cowherd boys are with Krishna in the forest. The gopis have some secret rendezvous, like this. The trees, they get to bow down to Krishna when he's walking through the forest, that area. But because of the nature of the rasas, sometimes there's some mixing, but generally it's not mixed. But in the Govardhan Hill Leela, to use a term of Prabhupada, everyone's packed up tight. Packed up tight. Such an opportunity to spend all day, every day for a whole week. Just looking at Krishna without any restriction, especially the Braja Gopis. It had never happened to the Vrajavasis before, and as far as I can see, it would never happen again. Sometimes something happens once and it doesn't happen again. It evolves, it becomes more blissful Krishna consciousness. Like I think in my life, when I look back, when I became a devotee, there was something unique to those times. Even the colors, the smells, the nature of the people that we approached, the history at the time, how people received Krishna consciousness, how we were just discovering Krishna consciousness for the first time. Then later on, our movement became more successful, and we had big structures and farms, and that was nice, and now it's nice, and it's going to be nice in the future. So yeah. But this lifting of the Govardhan Hill, this is a historical thing that we can look back on and analyze it again and again and again and relish that. Of course, we know in Vrindavan the pastimes happen over and over again, that's true. But it's always like the first time. So the Acharyas write that about this opportunity that everyone had to associate with Krishna. They write that the Vrajavasis would often say in their day-to-day conversations before Govardhan Hill, I wish I could be with Krishna and see him all day, every day without cessation. And Krishna was well aware of this. And thus in various ways he arranged for the eventual lifting of Govardhan Hill. And his feelings on this matter are recorded. And I quote, one of the Acharyas has given us this quote. When the Vrajavasis take shelter beneath Govardhan Hill, Krishna thought, I will give them the chance to see the beauty of my blissful form continuously without stopping. For 7 days, and during all 8 phases of the day, the Vrajavasis will be able to associate with me without cessation. They will see me without obstruction, and thus I will have granted their desires. All of them as they surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. If this is what we want, by cleansing our hearts, eventually this is what we will get. If that's what we want. And we have to want it very, very strongly. We have to really want that. How do we get that hankering? Well, one way is like we're doing right now, just hearing about Krishna's pastimes. They're like, what could be more attractive than this? This is the ultimate book. This is the ultimate movie. This is the ultimate tale. This is the absolute truth. But it's interesting because even though Krishna granted the Vrajavasis their desire, they remained unfulfilled because they were unable to engage with Krishna in ways exclusive to their individual relationships. Okay, they can see him, but you know, the cowherd boys, for instance, they were under Govardhan Hill, but they wanted to play with Krishna, but he was unable to play with them because he couldn't move. He's holding up the mountain. And the Braja Gopis, they wanted to relate to Krishna as their lover, but they were inhibited by the presence of their elders. However, the greatest pain for all the Vrajavasis was that they were not able to serve Krishna under the hill. And this is our relationship with Krishna. Shiver Supoya Krishnara Nityadas. We're all servants, and the servants take pleasure in serving a glorious master. In this world, you don't get much pleasure from serving your masters. There are obviously some benevolent persons, but you know, to serve Krishna, that's our inherent nature. And when we get back to that, it's very, very satisfying. So in the spiritual world, it's all about service to Krishna in various ways. So the greatest pain, that we're really going deep here and analyzing this pastime of Govardhan Hill, the pain, of course, you know, there's wind and there's storms, you know, they've undergone so much turbulence. But the real pain for all the Vrajavasis is that they were not able to serve Krishna under the hill. It's described they were forced to stand helplessly around him and simply watch him. So here, once we hear, oh, they're happy watching him, and now they're not happy watching him. This is churning the ocean of the nectar of devotion. They wanted to serve him restrictedly, each according to the relationship with him. But it's described that, and this is really interesting when Acharya says, it's described that prema itself wanted to further intensify their love for Krishna, and therefore prema itself withheld that opportunity. These feelings of separation while in Krishna's presence, it reminded me how when we were out at Prem Sarovara, we gave a lecture on, I think it was the 5 types of separation. There's different types of separation. And it reminded me of how Srimati Radharani was experiencing prema vaichitya. Prema vaichitya is the separation where you're with somebody, but you're feeling intense separation from them. It's a whole pastime. I won't go into that now, but Radharani's sitting there and in her prema vaichitya mood of separation. Krishna's right there, but where's my Krishna? Where's my Krishna? Like that. Prema vaichitya, separation from one's lover, although the lover is next to you. So they're with Krishna under Govardhan Hill, but they're feeling a type of separation. The separation from their service, which is their life and soul. We're getting an understanding that by serving Krishna's representatives, the spiritual master, our service attitude is awakened by serving him who's Krishna's representative. And we know that is our connection, and we all relish serving our spiritual master, serving Srila Prabhupada. That's our life, that's our soul, that's the umbilical cord that connects us to the mother, to our father, Srila Prabhupada. Without service, what would life be? Service to Hari, Guru, and Vaishnavas. So now, another main concern for everyone was the very fact that Krishna, as a mere child, 7 years old, was standing holding the mountain. It's another issue. At one point, Mother Yasoda scolded Krishna. She said, "Son, don't you understand? First you provoked the demons by killing their leaders, and now you have arranged the demigod. You have angered the demigods by offending Indra. All this has forced you to hold up the mountain in desperation." Then putting her hands together, she addressed Govardhan Hill. She scolded Krishna like that. And then she turned to the hill And she folded her hands and she said to Govardhan Hill, "O Giriraj, please be compassionate and grant me a boon. If you are in fact a worshipable deity, then please do something to become soft and weightless, so that my little boy Krishna will not feel any discomfort. O Honorable One, such is my request. Such is my request." Yashoda Mai ki. So then Krishna tried to reassure his mother. "Mother," he said, "why are you worrying? I've already told you. Giriraj is floating by his own power. Nothing could be more delightful for me than acting as an instrument of his will." And Mother Yashoda replied, "My dear son, you may be enjoying yourself, but you must be getting tired by now. I will only believe what you say when Govardhan leaves your hand and hovers in the sky above you by himself." All these conversations are so wonderful. Then Madhu Mangal, the funny Brahmin boy, he spoke up. He said, "O Queen," addressing Mother Yashoda, "don't you know that actually this mountain rests weightless on Krishna's finger by the strength of my mantras and my austerities? And they are also soothing his upright arm." So Mother Yashoda, she snapped back. "Nonsense, boy. I am burning in anxiety over my headstrong son, who is suffering because he never listens to good counsel. And all you do is just make jokes and play the fool. You play the fool." So now when Nanda Maharaj saw that his wife was losing her temper, he spoke up in Madhu Mangala's defense. He said, "Yashoda, why scold Madhu Mangal? Experts in diplomacy often use amusing words to ease the tension of trying situations." Experts in diplomacy often use amusing words to ease the tension of trying situations. I met a politician one time. I was campaigning in India on behalf of our Polish tour, which we were getting a lot of, especially a lot of difficulties in Poland, the government, etc. And I went to India to get some help from the politicians, put pressure on the politicians in Poland. And one politician said, "Maharaj, diplomacy means to calm things down, not heat them up. Be careful how you proceed." I always remember that. And I use that knowledge. So experts in diplomacy often use amusing words to ease the tension of trying situations. So Nanda Maharaj continued. Madhu Mangal's speech fits the necessity of the moment. Besides, our son very much appreciates the boy's humor. You should reward him, not chastise him. You know? So hearing the good advice of her husband, Mother Yashoda calmed down and she smiled at Madhu Mangal. She rewarded, "What, is that a reward? Well, if I got a smile from Mother Yashoda, I'd be very happy." So at this point, Krishna, by holding Giriraj with one hand, began to play his flute with the other. And then suddenly, Madhu Mangal lunged forward and he grabbed Krishna's feet and he said, Krishna, stop, don't play your flute." And Krishna said, "Why I shouldn't play my flute?" So then Madhu Mangal replied, "The melodies of your flute change the course of nature. They cause mountains to melt into rivers and rivers to turn into stone. And if Govardhan melts away, all our shelter will be gone, so stop playing your flute." All these glimpses we get through the eyes of our acharyas in the scriptures. Now, the Braja Gopis, they had their concerns. We were the cowherd boys, Mother Yashoda, and we've heard. But the the gopis, they had their concerns with Krishna holding up a mountain. One gopi, Shyamala, she said to Srimati Radharani, Radhika, if you continue to cast sidelong glances at Krishna from beneath your dancing eyebrows, you will disturb his mind so much that he will drop the mountain on us. If you continue to cast sidelong glances at Krishna from beneath your dancing eyebrows, you will disturb his mind so much he'll drop the mountain on us. So when Shyamala spoke like that, her words attracted Krishna's attention to Sri Radha. And seeing her, he manifested symptoms of ecstasy. Just looking at Radha. Tears were flowing from his eyes and he was trembling. Now the Vrajavasis, unaware that Krishna was looking at his beloved, Srimati Radharani, they mistook his ecstasy as overexertion and weariness. So the coward boys, they rushed forward and they raised their sticks in the air and they put the sticks there to help Krishna hold up the hill. There's varying descriptions, and this is one description. And at that very moment, when they put their sticks under Giriraja to hold up, Giriraja, Govardhan, let out a tremendous roar of ecstasy. A tremendous roar of ecstasy. And then, afraid that Krishna was about to drop the mountain, the people of Vrindavan desperately prayed to the Lord for help. In the midst of all this, Madha Mangal somehow managed to raise his voice, and he cried out, "O residents of Vrindavan, don't be afraid. You're completely safe. Krishna's not the least bit tired. He doesn't need you to hold up Govardhan Hill. You think you're helping him, you coward boys. But in reality, you're doing nothing but scratching Giriraja's belly with your sticks." Some of them are crying for help, some of them are putting their sticks like this. So he told the coward boys, in reality, you're doing nothing but scratching Giriraja's belly with your sticks. So then Krishna spoke. He said, "O Gopas, revered even by Mahadev himself, why be in anxiety? I'm here to personally protect you. Can't you tell that I'm not the least bit tired? Just look and see for yourselves." So, nice glimpse into the subterranean heavenly abode under Govardhan Hill. Now back, we're going to go to another place now, all connected. Back on Indraloka, we're going to visit King Indra. Back on Indraloka, King Indra, intent to destroy Vrindavan and all its people and all its animals, redoubled, it's described, he redoubled the fury of his attack as each day passed. Time and time again, he released fiercer winds and more devastating clouds. He was determined to succeed. And after several days, convinced that, Vrindavan was didn't exist anymore, he sent a messenger, a scout, to assess the damage. Go and see what it looks like now, after all the thunderbolts and the lightning and the rain. So he sent a scout. The scout went and came back with his report. And he told King Indra, much to his dismay, "O King of the gods, I have seen a great wonder. By consuming the offerings meant for you, the Anakuta, that hill has become very powerful. He stands tall and proud despite our best efforts to destroy him." And then Indra became outraged. "But what about the people? Aren't they all dead?" And the scout replied, "We didn't see any people. We didn't see any people or any animals. They must have been incinerated by the flames of your thunderbolts." Where were they? They're under the hill. "We didn't see anybody." So it's described, that news gave Indra hope. but not fully confident. He instructed that servant, you go back and look very carefully and make sure that not one of my enemies has survived. Like he's calling the cowherd boys, the Vrajagopis, the cows, his enemies. Make sure not one has survived. So that scout returned to Govardhan Hill. And this time he made a full assessment. Up, down, all around. And while observing the hill very carefully, he was shocked to see the subterranean heavenly kingdom. He got to see it under Govardhan Hill. And he was peering in, and his mouth just dropped, like, what is this? And he saw Mother Yasoda was pleading with Krishna to stop playing his flute and take some prasadam. Stop playing your flute and take something to eat. And she said to Krishna, oh my darling, please stop playing your flute for a few moments and pacify my heart. Your flute music, my dear boy, cannot fill your stomach, but this delicious food can. My dear Damodar, you have not eaten for days. Even if you are not hungry, please keep in mind that Balarama and your friends will not eat without you. The hungry growling in their stomachs is drowning out the noise of the thunder outside. The hungry growling of their stomachs is drowning out the noise of the thunder outside. So Yasoda could see that Krishna was not listening. So she appealed to his friend Subal. Subal took the flute from Krishna's hand and pushed the prasadam in Krishna's mouth. And then Krishna just smiled. So this scout, this messenger of Indra, some type of minor demigod, what is this blessing? He's peering into the world of pure devotional service. And simply by witnessing these exchanges of love, that messenger of Indra's heart melted, and he became deeply attached to Krishna. Oh, if it was so easy. So much so, actually, he didn't immediately return to Indraloka, as you're supposed to. It's described he kind of hung around Braj for a time. But finally, reluctantly, he returned to heaven. And back in Indra's court, he came forward with his report to his master. Indra was waiting, all the ministers, everyone, like, what's the progress? Are they all dead? So the messenger said, O king of Devaloka, we mistakenly thought that the cowards perished in our attack, but they did not. Sheltered beneath Govardhan, in a cavern that is as opulent as the subterranean heaven of Patala, the subjects of Nanda are enjoying a continuous blissful festival, while their prince balances Govardhan Hill on his left hand, on his finger. Indra, his anger just increased unlimitedly hearing this news, and in his delirium, he began himself throwing one thunderbolt after another, to Govardhan Hill. And confident that he destroyed the hill, he again sent the messenger back to check on the devastation that his thunderbolts had done. But once again, his servant returned with quote-unquote bad news. The servant said, O master of the demigods, your strong lightning bolts did not actually strike Vrindavan, but their cumulative effect actually could not even cause one leaf to fall from the ground of any tree in Vrindavan, or give trouble to a single ant on Govardhan Hill. The creatures on the mountainside remain completely undisturbed and peaceful. As for the people staying beneath Govardhan, we have witnessed them being tossed by the playful, glistening waves of bliss emanating from Sri Krishna. My dear Master, the word suffering means nothing to the residents of Vrindavan. So, infuriated even more now, in a last desperate attempt to finish his demoniac plans, Indra reached for his ultimate weapon. What is his ultimate weapon? It's a lightning bolt made from the bones of the Dachi Muni. The same one he'd used against Vritasura, the Dachi Muni, a lightning bolt made from the bones of the Dachi Muni. And storming out of his palace, he looked towards where down below on the earth, stormed, he had this weapon, and he started to release it. He thought, this is going to do it. And Prabhu's, listen to this. Something really amazing happened. Shall I share it for next week? Okay, no, I'll tell you now. Something amazing happened. Krishna decided that he'd had enough of Indra's nonsense. And by his mystic powers, he paralyzed Indra's arm and froze the thunderbolt in midair. And at the same time, Krishna stopped all the clouds and all the winds circling around Vrindavan and Govardhan Hill. And I read, he froze their presiding deities. He stopped all the clouds and the winds and he froze their presiding deities. And then Krishna forced Indra into a trance in which he was freed from the mode of passion. Thereby, Indra could see the Lord very clearly. And the Acharyas say, in that dreamlike state, like a vision actually, it's not a dream which is something illusory, but it's in that vision, it's described unknown even to great yogis. Indra saw Krishna seated upon 1,000-petaled lotus, dressed as a cowherd boy, ornamented with jewels and garlands, and holding a flute in his hand. And that vision of Krishna's bluish-black form suddenly removed all the ignorance in Indra's heart. And by the mercy of the Lord, he was able to remember a very special prayer that he had received from his guru, his spiritual master, Vrajavasis, many, many years before. And it is with this prayer, dear devotees, that we will conclude today's lecture. It's a wonderful prayer. He received it from his guru, Vrajavasis. We've also received a prayer from our Guru Maharaj, from Srila Prabhupada, haven't we? All of us, our gurus, we've received from them the Hare Krishna mantra. But in many ways, the mantra is like a prayer, is because Prabhupada, when translated, he said, "My dear Lord, my dear energy of the Lord, please engage me in your devotional service." That's a prayer. Or many times I've shared one time when Prabhupada was asked, "What's the meaning of this mantra? What does it mean?" Prabhupada said, "It means my friend, my friend, my friend." So we chant like that, and that's what it means to chant from the heart, not just the mantra, but chanting the mantra from the heart. So Indra had received a very, very beautiful prayer from his spiritual master, Vrajavasis, which in his purified state now, because we see how Krishna has given him so much mercy, he remembers that prayer. And we'll finish with that prayer today. It's said in performing arts that one should always end a performance on a high note. And I cannot think of a higher note to conclude today's presentation than these prayers by Lord Indra, who, despite all of his offenses to the Lord, was actually able, you'll see, was actually able to realize the true sense of the word, the real nature of Braj Bhakti. Braj Bhakti. Indra got a glimpse. This prayer, which Indra chanted to Krishna, he offered this prayer to Krishna in his vision, is found in the Brahma Vaivarta Purana, in the section entitled Krishna Janmakanda, chapter 21, which describes that he received it from his guru, Brihaspati. Originally, Krishna gave it to Brahma. The source is Krishna. Krishna had given it to Brahma, you chant this, who then gave it to the four Kumaras in Pushkara, who then gave it to Angira, who then gave it to Brihaspati. This is the Guru Parampara. Then at the time of war with Ritasura, Brihaspati passed the prayer on to Indra. And by Krishna's grace, after trying to destroy Vrindavan, Indra came to his senses and he remembered this prayer. And it's said that if one regularly recites this prayer, one will attain pure devotion. And he or she will become an associate of Krishna in their next life. And it's even said that in this life, someone chants this prayer in this life, such a person becomes freed from the miseries of birth, death, old age, and disease. And even in dreams, he will never see Yamaraja's messengers. What to speak of ever going to Yamaraja's abode? So, now I'll repeat this beautiful prayer. Indra actually, it's described, he went down on his knees in his vision, seeing Krishna in that beautiful form there. And he prayed as follows. O my Lord, O indestructible and eternal Brahman, O form of pure goodness, always freed from the material modes of nature, I offer my respectful obeisances to you. In Satya Yuga, you appeared with a white complexion, which stands for purity and truth. In Treta Yuga, your complexion is reddish like saffron. In Kali Yuga, it is golden, the color of love for you. Isn't that beautiful? In Kali Yuga, it is golden, the color of love for you. And in this Dwapara age, your bluish black complexion reflects the loving feelings for you that the gopis have concealed in their hearts. Thus I bow to you, my Lord, Krishna, the son of Nanda and Yashoda. With the artistic sound of your flute's melodies and your indescribable beauty, you steal away the hearts of the gopis and make yourself dearer to Radha than many millions of her own lives. You are self-satisfied, yet you delight in reciprocating the love of your devotees by indulging in unique, human-like pastimes in your original abode of Sri Vrindavan Dham, where many white cows reside. In these pastimes, you sometimes comb Srimati Radharani's hair, lacquer her feet, chew the beetle already chewed by her, the betel nut, and sometimes you sit with her in a secluded grove. Sometimes you play water sports with Sri Radha, stare at her as she casts sidelong glances your way, and sometimes you decorate her with flower garlands you yourself have strung. Sometimes you stroll through the gardens of Vrindavan with the gopis, accept food offered to you by the wives of the brahmanas, and occasionally eat tala fruit with your cowherd boyfriends. Sometimes you steal the garments of the unmarried gopi girls, call the cows and carrot boys on your flute, and you regularly sing beautiful songs in the company of all your friends. O Supreme Personality of Godhead, O you who engage in these and many other pastimes throughout eternity, I, your humble servant, offer you my respectful obeisances again and again and again and again and again. Isn't that wonderful? Indra's prayers. He really got purified. He remembered what his guru had given him, as we must remember what our gurus have given us. When he finished, the vision of Krishna sitting on the lotus in front of him disappeared. And the King of Heaven returned to external consciousness and was again able to move. And it's described, embarrassed and a little fearful, he thought, my master, the Supreme Lord, has descended to earth as the cowherd boy Krishna and has held up this mountain. Now, no one, therefore, can harm Govardhan Hill or the Vrajavasis ever again. Then filled with remorse, but divested of his pride, and weighed down by hundreds of sorrows, he boarded the celestial airplane and headed back to his abode. And in a previous lecture, we discussed in great detail how later on he approached Krishna with a celestial Sarabi cow, you remember, and asked for forgiveness. That was a 2-hour class. And Krishna got the name Govinda, and that was at Govinda Kund, like that. So we won't discuss that pastime again. It's kind of the next section, but we already did it. But Prabhus, we have many more pastimes to discuss about Govardhan Hill. Lots more nectarian details. And we will take that up next Friday. So Giriraja Govardhan Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki. Thank you so much again for this opportunity to research the scriptures and hear from our acharyas and share that information. It's described the speaker and the audience both become equally purified. So I really love this service, and I'll be looking forward to speaking to you. Again, please, everyone send me your blessings so I can do it. Shri Shri Gaur Nitai Ki, Shri Krishna Balaram Ki, Shri Shri Radha Shama Sundar Ki, Vrindavaneshwari Shrimati Radharani Ki, Shri Prabhupada Ki, Giriraja Govardhan Sivala Ki, Jai Ho, Govardhan Hill Ki, Goloka Vrindavan Dham Ki, back home, back to Godhead Ki. Take all the fallen souls, every single one of them, back home, back to Godhead with us so we can do Parikrama of Giriraja Govardhan in the spiritual world as well. Hare Krishna. See you soon. Thank you so much.